Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Scott Groves with the On the Edge podcast. I am here with my recent but feels like old friend, Phillip Stutts. And Phillip is the owner of a company called Win Big Media. And he wrote this book, which I love. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, it's called The Undefeated Marketing System. And when I was getting ready to interview Phillip, I was telling Chris, who you guys know here, he's my Jamie. He's like, so what does this guy do again? I'm like, well, here's the interesting story. Phillip started working on political campaigns. That led to owning one of the biggest data sets in the entire country. And Phillip's the guy who politicians go to when they're like, hey, the next presidential election, give us some data. And he's like, well, in precinct 13 outside of Cleveland, Ohio, single moms who shop at Target are going to decide that precinct, which is going to decide the state, which is going to decide the election. So let's come up with a marketing campaign to attract those people. And my first question is, did I nail it in that description of what you do, Phillip?
Man, I cite the best description, because when you think about it, whether you're a real estate agent or you're running a company and you're trying to sell to customers, wouldn't you want to market in that way to those customers? Like I did a podcast this morning, and the guy was like, what's it like marketing, politicians? And I said, well, you know what? I don't know. I like the politician. Fine. I'm obsessed with the voter. I want to know what the voter believes, what moves them, what would get a voter to vote for an unknown or even an unsavory candidate.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's interesting to me. And so that's, the book, The Undefeated Marketing System, was born out of that, because I was like, why aren't business owners running marketing the same way? A lot of times, Scott, you find business owners run out and go, I hired a marketing agency and we created a brand and a logo and a website. We spent $40,000 on all that. And then I'll go, cool. What do your customers want? And they go, I don't know. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't you want to know that first before you go out and spend any money? And so that's how we do it in politics. And if I'll keep going, but it's like, if a guy in Nevada, like we just did the Senate race in Nevada. Now, we did not win it. We lost it by the razor's edge. But if the guy running for Senate in Nevada sits down and says, I want to run for the U.S. Senate, and I say, okay, cool. What do you believe? Inevitably, the egotistical politician will tell me like 27 different things they want to run on, and I'm like, oh, Jesus, like nobody wants to hear your 27 policy issues.
Right.
But what we do is then we go and use our data and survey and figure out with voters, what do they care most about within those 27 issues? So it's not telling a politician what he should say. It's telling the politician, here's where you have alignment with your voters. And of the 27 things you want to run on, they only care if you want to get elected, you talk about these two issues of the 27, and we're not talking about the other 25 again. Like, that's the secret. That's how the politics is. That's how political campaigns are won. And so it's the same thing I'd tell you for a business owner or a real estate agent. Like, if you're out there talking to your customer base in a way that doesn't reflect what they're looking for, then you're just wasting time and wasting money. So find out where you have alignment with them beyond what you're trying to sell, and then market to that for exponential returns.
And by the way, we don't even have to dig into this, but I just want to say this as an aside and a compliment to you. Like, you've worked on these high profile political campaigns, presidential campaigns, senatorial races. And in your book, The Undefeated Marketing System, I love that most of your examples, you drilled down to a termite and pest control company. Because one of the things that I love most about you, we met obviously in a very open space where people are really vulnerable because we're talking about dad issues and family issues and whatnot. And that was cool. And then as I got to know you, I'm like, this guy is way more humble than he should be based on what he's accomplished in the businesses he runs. And so I love that bled through in your book, that you're like, oh, I could have talked about all these people and name dropped all these campaigns that I've worked on, but you were like, let's just talk about the termite company that needs to feed their family and attract the local consumer and how they can do that in their market and what's important. Because one of the examples, you're like, I went to this termite guy's website and it's like him and some other hillbilly standing in front of their truck, not really not really marketing to the people who they want to serve. And you're like, bro, you got this all wrong. Like, we got to fix this.
They're two of the nicest guys ever. I mean, I felt terrible writing about them and I didn't use their names because they're such good dudes. But they're like one's like 250, one's like 300 pounds. And in their website, they're leaning against a car in t-shirts and shorts. And I'm like, no mom is going to go, oh my God, we have roaches in the house. Let me Google pest control companies in my area. And, oh, this one pops up and, oh my God, these two very large men leaning up against a car and with no, logos, no uniforms, no nothing. That is not safe for them. That's like the dumbest thing. And they were spending all this money when we came to them. And, ultimately, in one of the pest control companies we worked with, Scott, we had this crazy idea and we were working with a national pest control company, a different one. And they were innovative enough to go along with this idea. And the idea was we were going to run a marketing campaign, spend a shit ton of money, their money, and not acquire one new customer. And they went along with it. And what we did was we went to their entire customer base, which is around a couple million people. And we marketed to give them discounts if they left us a 5-star review. And so what happened was we acquired 50,000 5-star reviews. So whether you go into Cincinnati or you go into Topeka, Kansas, or you go into Cleveland, Ohio, if you go and Google and say, hey, I need a pest control company in Cleveland, obviously we market them to be in the top 3 of the SEO because you have to be in the top 3. It's probably like a real estate agent. You better be in the top 3 if people are Googling it, or you're not no one's going to find you. Right.
Right.
And then the question is, what's the difference that makes the difference? Because they're only there because they want the bugs dead. That's it. Right. People are buying a house. They only want to buy a house. Right.
Right. They want a place to live.
The question is, when they look at all 3, they go to that comparison shop. What's the difference that makes the difference? And so in the pest control story, you have Tom's Pest Control in Cleveland that has 37 5-star reviews. You have Nico's Pest Control Company that's got 280 5-star reviews. Or you have this client of ours and they got 50,000 5-star reviews. If you're a mom with kids in the house, or you're a family that's going to leave your dog around, who do you want in your house? The 50,000 5-star review campaign or company, or the 61 5-star review? And so that is an evergreen campaign that has lasted since 2018. We started that campaign. They're still running it. It's the number one campaign they've ever run in the history of the company. It didn't make money on the front end. It made them infinite money forever on the back end. And that's what we're trying to help people understand. Because again, if people are Googling real estate agents in your area, you're a dime a dozen. So the customer is only going to look at 2, maybe 3. So you better be up there with SEO. And then once you get to the 2 or 3, what's the difference that makes it? What makes you stand out? So when we talk about understanding what that customer is looking for, besides buying a house, which is probably trust in the real estate market, how are you developing that? So I'll give you one real estate example. We work with a title company in the state of Florida, and they're a B2B company, right? Their customer are real estate agents.
Right.
And I write about this in the book, but they came to us and they were just a regional title company.
Is this
about 4 years ago.
Is this the puppy dog one?
Yep.
I love it. I loved it so much. That was a great example. Sorry, go for it.
Yeah. So they were just this little regional title company, right? And they started growing. They brought us in and said, hey, we need to distinguish ourselves. And so we said, cool. So we what we did, so I have a partnership, you said this earlier, but I have a partnership with the largest data collection, analytics, and AI company in America. And so in our database, we have 240 million American consumers, 550 million connected devices. We're tracking 10 billion with a B, 10 billion online purchasing decisions every day and 1 trillion searches. And so we were able to overlay all the real estate agents on their list, track their movements online, and spit out a massive data report telling them everything they want to know about every real estate agent in their market, not like individually, but as an aggregate. And what we found was that 61% of the real estate agents in their market own dogs. Now, the owner of the business thought I was going to come to him and market his title company. And I said, yes, but we're going to brand you with dogs everywhere. And so we ran an ad campaign with dogs in it. We branded dogs. We did all these things with dogs. Every time they did a closing, a real estate agent would come in and go, hey, saw the dog ad. I have 2 dogs. I love that ad. That was amazing. You guys are the best, right? That company now is the 3rd largest title company in the state of Florida. 3rd largest. So, you would imagine after COVID, how many people moved to Florida. To say that the 3rd largest title company is massive.
Yeah. And there's a few giant national ones like Tycor and Lawyers or whatever that like you're probably never going to beat because they have national presence. But for a regional title company that's only in one state to be number 3, I know this is not relevant to anybody who's not in the real estate or lending space. That's a big effing deal. Like that's a really big deal. So kudos on that. Like,
well, the question is, did the dog ads make them the 3rd biggest? And the answer is hell no. That'd be stupid to say something like that. Did the dog ads build their brand and help them grow along the way and give them an excellent brand reputation in everybody they came in contact with? And the answer was 1,000% yes. And so we're still working with that company, even in this market, because they're like, hey, we have to still be the great brand. And even though, real estate's struggling right now or starting to struggle, they don't care. They're like, we're all in, we're not going anywhere, and we're going to be the best in the state one day. So it's pretty interesting in that regard.
So here's another reason why I had a ton of respect for you as a person, but after I read the book, I have a ton of respect for you as a business person. I tend to shit on branding people because I'm like, okay, that's cool. You figured out your color palette and you came up with a cool logo and you came up with a brand, but branding and marketing doesn't matter if it's not partnered with lead generation and generating business and putting money in the coffers, right? Because I could spend $200,000 tomorrow on a redesign of Consolidated Coaching or the Scott and Dallas mortgage team, and it could look all pretty and we could have all the takeaways and the websites and the funnels and everything. But if it doesn't convert into clients one way or another, either with that 5-star review idea or with actual butts in seats and, the phone ringing, then it was just a waste of money. And what I liked in your book is you were talking about like, hey, yeah, this is a little bit about branding and marketing, but it's a lot about A/B testing, different ways to get to market fast and get consumers engaged fast. So, when somebody comes to you and you come back with, hey, you should be the dog title company, that's a big leap of faith for them to say, oh, well, we know what you charge and you came back with dogs. So can you talk a little bit about how you're going to market and testing this and actually putting dollars in pockets?
Yeah. So I wrote a book in 2018. The first book I wrote was called Fire Them Now. It was about unethical marketers. And part of what I found in my research for that book by talking to over 100 CEOs was A/B testing is done by almost every marketing. If you're marketing firm and doing A/B testing on one message versus another message, that's almost fraudulent. But the way that 99% of marketers do it is they go, hey, we sat around a table, Scott, and we had a brainstorming session and we came up with these 2 ideas. Let's go A/B test them. I think that is completely fraudulent. What I'm saying is I only A/B test what we found in the data would work. And then we're A/B testing to figure out which one works the best. So for instance, we did a protein powder company. They're a 8-figure company. And we found in their data a bunch of different things. I think 50% of their market was vegan, vegetarian. So they offered a vegan, vegetarian protein, like a pea protein. powder and all this stuff. But one of the things we also found was something like 73% of their market hated soda. Seriously, like, isn't that crazy? Like, how would you find that out? But we did.
They hated soda.
Hated soda. So we told them, hey, we're going to A/B test these 10 things we found in the data, but we want to do it, because I come from politics, so I like the art of the negative ads. Really exciting for me. In fact, that's probably going to be the third book I write. Is that the art of the negative ad? I call it. It's like comparative advertising. I kind of coined the term comparatizing.
Yes.
But the point is that we A/B tested all these ideas from the data, and of the 10 ideas, the number one message that blew through the roof. It was the most successful ad test that had ever been done in the history of this 8-figure company trying to go to 9 figures, and it was the anti-soda ad. And it not only was it got 50% more clicks than the number 2 out of 10 ads that we tested.
Wow.
And it got a 20% higher conversion rate from just compared to the number 2 ad. So we knew all 10 messages would work. We just didn't know which one would work the best. And so we did this A/B test on the 10 messages, but this is what we found. So my point is, like, everything I do, and the whole reason I wrote the book was to eliminate the risk of the business owner. Does that make sense? And so by telling that business owner, hey, we A/B tested at a small, amount, what messages would work and what wouldn't work. And we found out that these 2 messages, the vegan, vegetarian, and the anti-soda ad, were the top 2, but the top one would blow through the roof. And it was the most successful ad they'd ever run. Why? I didn't guess. I didn't sit around a table. I'd love to tell you I'm a genius that came up with an anti-soda ad. I'm not. I just listened to what the customer wanted and delivered what they were looking for.
And why is that so rare? Like, is it because you pay an absurd amount of money for this data set, or you have this insight because of your political background? Like, why isn't this the norm that all marketing companies go to the data first? Hey, Scott, you're interested in growing your mortgage business or your coaching business or whatever. Let's go to the data. Hey, only 10% of your possible clientele are libertarians. They don't want to hear this shit. Wind down the podcast, be a little bit more centric, and advertise in this way. Why isn't that the go-to metric for like the jumping off point for marketing companies? Like, why are you guys so different?
Because we didn't start in the corporate marketing world. We started from a totally different industry, and we saw vulnerabilities and gaps in the corporate marketing world, and we brought, our strengths into that. I don't know. If I'd started in the marketing world, I probably wouldn't even thought about it.
Right.
But because I worked in politics, where data, every move we make is rooted in what the data tells us. That's just how the approach I would take in the marketing world. So it's funny. I honestly, other than like Gary Vaynerchuk, I don't know another marketer. Like, I get asked all the time, oh, these guys must be your competitors. And I go, I don't even know who that is. I don't know. I don't care. Everybody does their own thing. This is my thing. And I just don't have a clue other than, like, I listen to CEOs. So CEOs tell me, this is what this marketing agency did. This is what, and I'm like, what? No. Ooh, why'd you do that? And so, yeah, that's where I get all my data from. Like, when I say data, like rhetorical data from CEOs telling me about the ways they were taken advantage of, the ways they were scammed, the ways that they spent money for a year, the ways they got locked into, contracts they couldn't get out of. I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I want to go back to kind of your genesis. So maybe we're stepping back in time a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your political journey? Because you already mentioned you love the art of the negative ad. You bring this political mindset. And I have to imagine, I've donated to campaigns across the spectrum, whether it be, Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, the Libertarian Party. Somehow
so you're 0 for 3 in those. Okay.
Oh yeah. No, I'm a total loser. I did vote for Trump the first time because I didn't vote for Trump. I voted for Pence. I voted for Libertarian. Not Pence. Jesus, now I can't remember his name. The governor from New Mexico who ran
Gary Johnson.
Gary Johnson. Yeah, I voted for Gary Johnson. Yeah. So no, I haven't voted.
I campaigned with Gary Johnson in 2000 in New Mexico.
I love it. I have not voted for a winner since George W. Bush. Let's just put it that way. But can you take us?
Hey, by the way, I was a senior person on that campaign. So see, my effect got you. My marketing skills acquired one vote that no other person has ever been able to get from a
Perfect.
winning point. There you
Perfect.
go.
So talk about that. Can you talk, give us the 60-second Reader's Digest of your political journey? Because I know your company's worked on over 1,500 campaigns. That's a lot. And I know you're also kind of brand agnostic. It's just a client. You're not only in one camp or the other. So can you tell us about your political journey?
Yeah. So I'm going to make you feel like a piece of shit right now. And
Go
I'm
for it.
sorry to do this
I'm
to you.
totally cool.
We've had 1,533 wins. Not
Holy shit.
Yeah, not worked on 1,500 campaigns. So we ended up having, I think, 110 or 111 wins in 2022 at my company. And so we've done a lot. But I'm a first generation ADD kid. So there wasn't ADHD that got brought in later. I was just ADD, and I was put on Ritalin in high school in the 80s and told, that, like, I don't know, I was just putting dumb classes and all that stuff. So ultimately, I guess my point is I could really only have a job when I got out of college is something I was really excited about. Otherwise, I didn't have the attention span. Like, I had friends of mine that were going to sell like truck beds, and I'm like, please put a gun to my head. That sounds horrible. And they're like, oh no, you can make a ton of money. And I go, I don't care about money. Like, that's not, I would never want to do something like that. And so I cared about two things growing up: college football and political marketing campaigns. I love campaigns. I was just fascinated. I was a political science minor in college, and just studied politics, read books, but it wasn't about like going to work on Capitol Hill and writing laws or being a politician. Like, I hate all that shit. I wanted to be the guy helping get people elected. I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And so, yeah, I mean, I got into,
by the way, said no 17-year-old ever. Like, I really want to be the marketer for these political campaigns. Like that's got to be a rarity.
I liked it. I thought it was super cool. And I came of age, I lean right. So I came of age when the Republicans were taking over Congress for the first time in 40 years. And I saw that history being made. And I thought, and then Bill Clinton being elected, and then the Republicans taking over control. And I just went, man, there's something that's like do or die in politics, that your reputation, everything you do is on the line every day. And there was something really exciting about that, Scott. And so I ended up working on a presidential campaign in 1996. I worked on Bob Dole's campaign. That was my first campaign. And then, as he ran against Clinton and lost. But I then started just being a homeless vagabond that traveled the country for basically 6-7 years working on political campaigns. I ran a governor's race in Louisiana, a U.S. Senate race in South Dakota. I worked on multiple presidential campaigns, lived out in San Diego, lived out in New Mexico, lived in Washington, D.C., kind of based out of D.C. in between. And it was a great ride. I mean, there was a 3-year period, I think 2000, 2001, 2002, where I had a total of 21 days off in 3 years. And that was including weekends. So you had to love what you did. Like, and I loved it. I didn't, honestly, it kind of sucks now that I'm 48. I didn't really care about money. I was living on adrenaline every day and significance and probably got me in a lot of trouble down the road. But at the time, when I wasn't married and I was single and I didn't have any responsibilities and I wasn't beholden to anybody, it was a great period of my life to learn the skills of how to market politicians, to learn to be on the biggest stages that exist in politics, to be on presidential campaign stages, and to have to perform and show up, or you would never get another job again if you didn't become an A player political marketing operative. And so for me, that's where it is. By the time I was 30, I was completely burned out. And I spent 10 years just having a one-man firm where I was just a political consultant for like 10 years. And then I woke up and I was like 40 years old and I go, crap, if 2 clients drop me, I'm in deep trouble. And so I decided I was going to start a media firm called Go Big Media. And that was in 2015. We're 8 years old. We've done about 75 million in rev. And we've worked for U.S. Senate races, governor's races, hundreds of congressional races, state races all over the country. That firm is just rolling. And I've got a partner that runs that company now. And then I broke off in 2018 and started the corporate marketing agency and wrote all these books. And then since then, we've built out a couple other sub businesses, a PR company, a media buying company.
Wow.
And a political fundraising company. And so now we have CEOs in all those companies, and I help manage those CEOs.
So you said something out of everything you just said. Congrats on all the success, by the way. And congrats at 40 years old, realizing like, oh, I got to grow this bigger or find something else because I'm one or two clients away from like, I don't know, I got a kid now, I got a family, I got a wife, I got to actually worry about this shit.
I got a mortgage, I got everything. Yeah. I mean, well, hold on. I'll even say this. In 2015, all right, I'm about to turn 41. I made $75,000 that year. In 2015, this is not 10 years ago. $75,000. We had just moved to Florida. We had just built a house. I had a 1.5-year-old, and I have lived on adrenaline as a drug for so long that I'm like, screw it, let's go. I didn't realize how primed I was to be an entrepreneur because I just keep shoving all the chips on the table. My wife probably wants to kill me because I don't have any debt. I have 5 different companies. We have 45 employees, and I keep shoving the chips in the table at the end of the year and I don't take anything off. And I love it because I want to build stuff and I'm in it for the long haul.
Well, just take a little disbursement, fund the kids 529 plan, and then you'll be fine. But no, that's, by the way, I didn't know this about you.
I actually have a theory that the 529 plan is if I'm successful, I wouldn't even have to worry about a 529 plan. So
that's fair.
That's kind of, Justin Donald probably wouldn't like me very much, but that's kind of my bullet.
Oh man, like I didn't know that about you, by the way. I know a little bit of insight into your success and your finances from conversations that we've had. I had no idea that you effectively were starting at neutral less than 8 years ago. So kudos to everything you've built, man. I want you, because you mentioned Bob Dole was probably one of the first campaigns you worked on, or the first campaign you worked on. So tell me if I've made this up in my brain, or if you remember this as succinctly as I do. The Bob Dole, Bill Clinton campaign is the first time that I noticed, because I also lean right. I'm probably a Republican. I like to think I'm a libertarian. Was the first time that I realized that the conglomerate mass media was quite biased against Republicans and to the left. The reason for this is, at that time, there were already kind of rumors starting to spread about Clinton's infidelity, and maybe he was a little inappropriate with women, and maybe there was this Whitewater scandal where like a bunch of old people in Arkansas lost all their money. But Bob Dole accidentally said Brooklyn Dodgers instead of Los Angeles Dodgers, and that was run on every media show, every half hour on the half hour for 2 weeks as proof that he was out of touch with America, and he was too old for the job, and he hadn't been in a grocery store and bought his own milk in 15 years, and on and on and on, because he said Brooklyn Dodgers instead of Los Angeles Dodgers. Do I remember that correctly, or am I making this up in my head to justify my own belief in what the media does?
Well, so all of that is true, but no, the media's been that biased throughout history. That's just when you noticed it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's when I became aware of it. So it was that moment when they just kept playing Brooklyn Dodgers. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, this guy over here, yeah, he's young and he's hip and he just went on Arsenio Hall and played the saxophone, but he might be a criminal and a rapist. And this guy is like a war hero, and he just said Brooklyn Dodgers, and they're going to castrate him. Like, it just didn't. It didn't compute, and that was the age I was probably. When was Bob Dole? Was that 92 or 96? 96. So I was 17 years old. I was just getting ready to leave for the Army, because I remember Clinton got sworn in as I signed my paperwork for the Army, and my dad was like, "That's a bad move." But he's like, "This guy's going to be your commander in chief." And so the bias became very clear clear to me at that point. All right. So anyway, do you have a highlight on a political campaign that you can share that's not signed away in some NDA where you're like, man, we really pulled a rabbit out of a hat here, or we came up with this campaign promise or idea or slogan where, you know, we took a cellar dweller and made him the front runner? Do you have like one that really sticks out in your mind of like, oh, this is the success case I like to pitch when I'm in a pitch meeting?
So I'll give you one. His name's Ron DeSantis. You familiar with him?
I may have heard of him.
In 2018, he was down about 10 points with about 90 days to go. He was running against a guy named Andrew Gillum. Andrew Gillum was an African-American candidate. He was the mayor of Tallahassee, Florida, and he was beating Ron DeSantis by about 10 points. And so a third-party group came to us and said, we want to help DeSantis. And there's this, it's becoming more, shedding more light around the country now, but I've been on the forefront of like the school choice movement since like 2004.
Oh yeah.
And
I'm a big fan for a decade.
Right. And so we've found this, and I followed this sort of undefeated marketing system. I tell the story in the book, but we found a clip of Andrew Gillum saying that when he was elected governor, he was going to eliminate charter schools in the state of Florida. And so we decided, well, there's an angle. We should run a sort of an outsider campaign. We weren't coordinating with the DeSantis campaign. We couldn't legally. And so we took that clip. We decided to figure out who would be most affected by that. And obviously, when we looked through the data and looked through everything, we found out obviously it was charter school parents. Well, in the state of Florida, it was something like 90% of charter school kids were African American. So we targeted about 130,000 African American moms. Now, how did we find them? Well, we geofenced every single charter school in the state of Florida. So if you don't know what geofencing is, it's basically drawing an imaginary line around the building of each school and then pulling the IP addresses from that school, and then being able to eliminate the people that we noticed were coming in and out every day, like UPS drivers and FedEx drivers and principals and things like that, and just pulling out the people that were showing up right at drop off and pick up. And so we ended up getting about 130,000 African-American moms in our database. We ended up showing that ad and running a campaign and directing those ads to them, to those moms. We showed them that one ad that we made of Andrew Gillum saying he was going to eliminate charter schools. We, on an average, I think it was viewed 3.1 million times, which means that they saw it about 30 times on average each. When the election day came, Ron DeSantis won by 30,000 votes out of something like 6, 7, 8 million votes. I can't remember what the number was.
Tiniest of margins.
So when you compared the African-American female vote for Ron DeSantis in 2018, he got 90,000 African-American female votes, even though he was running against an African-American in the state. And Donald Trump got 60,000 African-American votes in 2016. And Rick Scott, who's the current senator, U.S. senator in the state, who was at the time the current governor, he got 30,000 African-American, and he was on the ballot with Ron DeSantis. So Ron DeSantis ended up getting 60,000 more African-American female votes. He won by 30,000. The Wall Street Journal said that school choice moms tipped the balance of the election for Ron DeSantis. And why do I tell you that that's such a good story? Well, obviously DeSantis is probably going to run for president. But we had a pandemic 3 years ago, and we could have had Andrew Gillum as our governor instead of Ron DeSantis. I live in Florida, so that's why I say we. And what happened was about 18 months after that election, Andrew Gillum, the married father of two, mayor of Tallahassee, got caught with gay prostitutes smoking meth in a hotel in Miami. I don't care if he's straight or gay. I really don't. But my point is that guy was almost the governor of one of the largest states in the country during a pandemic.
who wanted
And
to
then-
already shut down school choice, which means it was not going to go well for the school age kids
Well, he
during the
would have
pandemic.
done whatever the unions did, and you can see what happened when the unions were controlled in New York and California.
In California, that's why that's one of the reasons our kids no longer go to school in California.
And so my point ultimately is elections have consequences. A lot is on the line, and it's serious business. That's how we look at businesses now when we market them. There's a lot on the line. There's people's lives at stake. And I'm really proud of the work we did, but it almost never happened because Ron DeSantis was down 10 freaking points with 90 days to go. And he won by like 0.25%. And I was proud to be a part of that. It was listed as the largest geofarming marketing campaign in the history of American politics. And that's because of the way we were able to extract IP addresses from each of these schools and then target those IP addresses with our ads.
I love it, man. You know, I'd love to get your feedback here because you're in the know and you understand this stuff. You know, going to the 2022 election, Ron DeSantis crushes by like, what did you win?
19 points.
19 points.
59 to 40.
So he went from winning by 0.3 to 19 points. And, you know, I've got to think, it's got to be one of three theses for, is that a word? Thesisize? I don't know. It's got to be one of three reasons why he won by a landslide. Either one, way more Republicans moved to Florida than anybody truly understands due to the pandemic. That's number one. Number two, he's basically a shoo-in for president in, 2026 because he's just got that much popularity and brand awareness. Or number three, and this one to me is more interesting, and I start to put on the tinfoil hat, he enacted a whole lot of legislation to cut down on voter fraud. And I'm pretty sure it would have been on the front of the New York Times every day for the last, 90 days, had that implementation of voter fraud regulations prevented certain affected groups from not being able to vote. So I think we can kind of throw that one out the window. But it's like, is he just a shoo-in for our next president? Did way more Republicans move to Florida? Or does voter fraud actually happen maybe a little bit more than we think, and that, Republicans might be a little further ahead than we think? I know I'm asking you to commentate on a ton of stuff that may be outside your purview, but I feel like you have better insight than I do.
On the presidential thing, no, he's no shoo-in at all. I mean, there's this guy, I don't know if you've heard of him. His name is Donald Trump, and he has dominated the core Republican Party. And so if you've got 19 candidates running or 10 candidates running, who of the 10 will get the most votes when all those votes are split? And frankly, that's just going to be Trump right now. So what I get asked all the time, who's going to win? Nobody knows. And I ask me about who's going to win each, state, primary state or caucus state about 2 weeks before the election. And then I can give you an answer. But before then, it's all BS and everybody's just making stuff up. But what I'm saying is it's wide open. He's got a great shot, just like a lot of other candidates, including Trump, to get the nomination. As far as people moving to the state, a lot of people move to the state, but they moved from like New York. Like, were they Republicans or were they Democrats in New York that decided, you know what, I'm moving here for freedom and we need to keep this guy? The other thing is what a lot of people talk about, but you don't hear it a lot probably. Miami-Dade County, Hillary Clinton in 2016, even though Donald Trump won the state of Florida, she beat Trump in Miami-Dade County by 16 points. There, Miami-Dade County would be like it's something around there. It'd be like the 10th largest state in the country if it was a state. And Ron DeSantis won Miami-Dade County. It's the most Hispanic district in the state of Florida, and he won it. So what did he do? He flipped Hispanics in the state 4 years later,
right?
To a degree that Republicans have never seen.
Yeah.
And so that was massive. As far as the voter fraud, what DeSantis did was he said no drop boxes, no bulk drop-offs of ballots. You can't just run around and, hey, I'm Phillip. I'm going to go around and pick up 700 ballots and just drop them in a drop box. Right. He said, we're not doing that. If you want to vote, go vote. By the way, I had to do this. You have to show your ID.
Right.
You have to show your ID, and you can't do mass ballot harvesting. That's called ballot harvesting in California, in Nevada, where we just lost that Senate race, a lot of ballot harvesting going on. By just cleaning that up, DeSantis won from, like you said, 0.3% to 19 points. So is that, like, I get asked this question a lot. Was there election fraud in 2020? Right? Stop the steal, right? No. I mean, yes, there probably was election. There's always election fraud.
Yeah.
Was there some mass election fraud? No one's ever shown me any real evidence without, anecdotal stuff.
Right.
The election was absolutely stolen in one way, the suppression of truth from the Hunter Biden laptop story to the fact that Mark Zuckerberg put something like $450 million in get out the vote efforts in only urban communities around the country, including Detroit. I mean, there were the biasness and the suppression of news from every media outlet that now the Twitter files has confirmed happened. And so you have the FBI actively campaigning against, listen, whether you hate him or love him, I'm just telling you facts. The FBI was actively campaigning to try to suppress the votes and get people not to know what was going on. So, and frankly, the Trump campaign allowed all this ballot harvesting and mail-in ballots to happen when my point and what I've argued for years is if Trump didn't want this to happen, he should have stopped it before it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand.
It's really bad to say, oh, after it's over. Well, this isn't fair. Well, sorry. The rules are the rules.
Yeah.
You lost.
So I don't understand why some more intelligent Republican hasn't got this messaging from somebody like you, because when people ask me that question, I say the same thing. I'm like, was there illegal ballots cast? Yeah, sure. That probably happens in every election. Sure. Probably not enough to sway the election. However, what was fraudulent was, let's say, for example, in the state of California, which was always going to go Democrat, but we'll just use this as an example. Governor Newsom, under the guise of COVID, waved a magic wand, signed into law, I, the governor, am going to put everybody on mail-in ballots, whether you like it or not. You are automatically registered for mail-in ballots, which is illegal. It goes against the state constitution in how election laws are written. But he and many other governors in other states, they knew that by the time that worked its way through the courts, like the election was going to be over. It was signed, sealed, and delivered. So at my house, which I won't give out the address because I don't live there anymore, my house that I own that now has a renter in it, we got in the mail. I have always voted in person my entire life. We got my ballot. We got my wife's ballot. We got 3 ballots made out to the Chinese family that used to live there before us. And I only say that because I couldn't pronounce the name. And I know for certain that the reason we bought the house is because the wife of that family passed away and the family no longer wanted to live there, where they kind of, delivered hospice to their mom in the house, and it was too many bad memories. That's why we were able to buy it at such a great deal. And so I got my ballot for myself and my wife, 2 people that don't even live there anymore, and somebody who's deceased. So I could have voted 5 times. To me, that's where the fraud was. It was the manipulation of these election laws under the guise of COVID, because we know, going all the way back to our days in high school when it was MTV's Get Out the Vote, the rule has always been, yes, if everybody voted, liberals and Democrats would probably win by a landslide, but most of them don't care enough to vote. So Republicans have an edge on in-person voting. And I just don't know why anybody hasn't articulated this versus like, oh, the election was stolen. Well, yeah, kind of, but it was stolen procedurally. It wasn't stolen with like some crazy ballot harvesting in the middle of the night. And I don't know why nobody's talking about that. Because like that matters too, right? Like our laws have to matter. Gavin Newsom shouldn't just be able to take his pen and like make new edict, because that's not how government's supposed to work.
Well, he can do whatever he wants because you guys keep, not you, but like California keeps electing him, so they're going to get what he wants to do, because they don't. I mean, they had a choice to get rid of him and they chose not to. So my thing is, well, they want
right.
this,
right?
So give it to them.
Blows my mind.
I know.
So I'm going to put it out here on the record for my conspiracy thesis for the presidential primaries. I think it'll be Trump and DeSantis, and they'll find some way not to shit on each other so much. And if there's one thing that maybe Trump could like subjugate his ego for, would be his kids. Maybe. And I could see DeSantis going to Trump in some closed door meeting at Mar-a-Lago and be like, look, man, you're really dividing people. We're going to get screwed and we're going to lose to whomever on the Democrat side. Drop out, endorse me. I'll make one of your kids my VP candidate. And in 8 years when I'm done, Donald Jr. or Ivanka or whoever will be the heir apparent to be the next president. And like just bow out gracefully, fucking take a mulligan, endorse me. And the day you do that, I'll make your kid the vice presidential nominee.
So I think you're in Nevada, right?
Yeah.
I think you should go down to the casino and plop some money on that bet.
Nice. I like that.
No, because it's such a long shot that if it hits, you'll make a lot of money.
I'm gonna make it. We're gonna revisit this podcast in about a year, and you're gonna be like, dude, I need to hire Scott.
Yeah, I'm in. I will totally bring you on if this happens.
So what gets you fired up about? Because like I said in the book, you deal with stuff like this, like DeSantis becoming the governor, which might lead to him becoming the president. That sounds so sexy. But what I can tell that you actually get passionate about is the small business, the termite company that you help really turn things around and take their revenues from $500,000 to $1 million. So what's still getting you out of bed and fired up about during your normal daily business?
Well, we're in a recession, and you can look at this moment as you're screwed, or you can look at this as an opportunity. And that's what I get up every day and think about, Scott, because rich people get rich during the bad times and poor people get poor during the bad times. And that's the same thing I tell you for your mindset. And so for me, waking up every day and knowing that, we're in a moment where if we just double down on everything we're doing right now, we're going to be 10 times more successful in 5 years. That's what excites me. And that's what I try to preach to business owners more than anything else right now, because, in my marketing business, we've had a lot of scared business owners say, we got to cut marketing. And I'm like, really? There's nobody marketing right now. The rates are great. Like you could dominate sort of your market share right now. It doesn't mean you may break even. You may lose a little bit. You're making an investment. So when this thing turns around, your competition is like literally 10 miles behind you. That's how the winners win in downturns. That's what we're doing on all fronts right now. That's what I'm excited to help. We have a lot of companies right now that we work with that are doubling down in this moment. And that's the kind of people that we get excited to work with every day, whether we work with NASCAR, we work in the real estate markets, and we work in a lot of other markets, but those are the ones I want to be with the winners, because in 5 years, when you look back, you're going to have regrets. It's like during COVID, I kind of had the same message, like right when the lockdowns happened, like you should be spending money right now. And they're like, no, everybody's in lockdown. You can't do this. You can't do that. I'm like, everybody's on their phone all day. Like, what do you spend the money? Like, go. The companies that did that by June were having record revenues. And the companies that didn't were trying to catch up in June, and they couldn't catch up even by the fall or the winter of the next year. So this is a moment. This is a moment, if you're a business owner, for you to like, what's the opportunity? Or should I go in the corner, get in the fetal position and suck my thumb, right?
Yeah.
And the losers don't grow. The losers are I always say the poor get poorer in a bad economy and the rich get richer. Why is that? Because the rich don't quit. The rich are excited about the moment. And I'm super excited about what's going on right now.
And when you're talking to business owners to lean in, because that's kind of what I'm hearing, like, hey, you just got to do it. Even if there's not a financial reward today, because maybe there are fewer people buying widgets or whatever. What are you telling them to lean in on? Is it growing database? Is it growing brand awareness? Is it selling widgets to the people that can afford them? Like, how are you convincing business owners, hey, Scott, I know mortgage production is down 60%, but right now is the time to lean in and do what?
Well, if you're doing mortgage production, it feels like there's going to be a market available in about a year. And so I'd be marketing the hell out of those people right now, because when they decide they want to make a move, who are they going to look to? The people that have ignored them the past year, the people that were in front of them over the past year. That's what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is every business is different. B2B is different than B2C. B2C is different than e-commerce. And we work with all of these, right? We worked with, the Tony Robbinses of the world and the Peter Diamandises and Jay Abrahams and all these guys. The bottom line is that none of these guys are slowing down, right? This is a great time, even if you have the mindset of course, I'm not going to 10x my business next year. Yeah, I may be breaking even. But at a certain point, this thing turns and I've got all the market share in that moment because I didn't quit and I didn't just go, oh, I got to cut marketing budget. Like it's just such an anathema to me. I just can't understand it. I understand why people do it because they have a loser mentality. I don't understand. I would never be of that mindset though.
I love it, man. Final two questions, and one of them you just answered. What are you most looking forward to? It's leaning in. I love that. So I got to come up.
Well, one thing to say, I meant to say this earlier.
Go.
The billion-dollar companies that we all use right now, the Twitters and the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the Stripes and all these, they all were built on the backs of the recession of 2008. There are more billion-dollar companies built after 2000, because of 2008 and going through that period. Facebook was around in 2008. They were around in 2004 or 5 is when they were created. They didn't quit. Right. They doubled down.
Yeah, Zoom, and Stripe, all these places came out of 2008.
All of these, this is where billionaires are made, or 100 millionaires are made, or 10, 20 millionaire, 10 million, $20 million companies are made. They're on recession economies. And the ones that literally go, well, this is the time we're going to invest in the market. These are the ones that come out winning. It just happens every time.
I love it.
Sorry, I got on a rant.
No, I love it, man. This is why we had you on, because you're passionate about it. All right, just two more fun questions. I know you've got a lot. You've had the opportunity to meet a lot of people because of the data that you shepherd along. Whatever, we'll name drop on the next podcast we do. But who's somebody you still want to meet, or you would get a little starstruck if you met them? And favorite movie and why? These are my favorite questions to end with.
I don't know. I think there was a point in time where I really cared about meeting high level, high status people. I'm not sure I really give a shit about that anymore. I mean, I kind of got to meet everybody over the last couple of years that I really wanted to meet. Like I did work with Mark Cuban and Tony Robbins and Peter Diamandis and all this stuff, but I don't know. I'd have to think about that. The best movie is A River Runs Through It. It's just, for me, that's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Amazing movie. The first time I watched that, and the war scene is just so visceral. It really just sets the tone for the rest of the movie, and it's just brutal.
I mean, you know this because we're in a front row dads together, but I've gotten into hunting because of COVID. I started to hunt, and I realized how much I just love being in nature. I mean, like yesterday morning, I was sitting in a tree stand at 5 a.m. in 34-degree weather in Florida. And I just well, shit, I just go hunt for 2 hours before I go to work. And when I saw River Runs Through It in college, there's something about it that attracted me to that movie that I loved. And I realized later in life, it was the being outdoors, being in the wilderness, being within my own thoughts and being in the beauty of nature. And that movie just encapsulates that. The book is just as good. I read the book too. So, yeah.
And it's probably Brad Pitt at his hottest, right? I mean, he's just so good looking.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Cool, man.
For sure.
Well, I know your time's super valuable. I want to get you out of here in time, and I really appreciate you coming on. Maybe if you've got some empty space on your dance card as we come up on the next election, we can sneak 30 minutes with you to get your projections
absolutely.
and your ideas.
Yeah, you consider it done, man. I'd do anything for you.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.